On September 16, 2016, 3DS owners will finally be able to purchase and play the highly anticipated remake of the 2001 RPG epic Dragon Quest VII. Released on the PlayStation in North America in November of 2001 under the title Dragon Warrior 7, over a year after its unleashing on Japan, it's held mixed opinions over the last 15 years with fans and critics. Many revere it as the top game in the series, while others dismiss it as unpolished or in some cases almost unplayable. Let's take a look back at the original classic, its history, gameplay, and playability, then fast forward to today to see how it holds up and what you can expect from the 3DS reboot Dragon Quest VII: Fragments of the Forgotten Past. Originally announced in 1996, shortly after the release of its predecessor. Let me look up what that was called quick. Aha! Dragon Quest VI. DQ7 suffered from many delays that fans of the series and video games in general have since become used to. Up until this point, the series had been released exclusively for Nintendo hardware. 1 through 4 on the Nintendo Entertainment System, and the 5th and 6th installments on the Super Famicom, neither of which made it to the Super NES overseas, most likely due to the taxing localization efforts and unimpressive sales in markets outside of Japan for those NES titles. Dragon Quest publisher Enix announced 7 would be released for the Nintendo 64 Disk Drive, or 64DD, a rewritable disc add-on for the Nintendo 64 which didn't sell very well and never made it out of Japan. So, for all these reasons, North American Dragon Warrior fans had little reason to believe that further installments would ever make it out of the land of the rising sun. Then in January 1997, Enix announced it was moving development to the PlayStation, likely due to that console's popularity. This was a tough pill to swallow for Nintendo fans who had depended on Dragon Quest games being Nintendo exclusives, but bittersweet for fans overseas where, unlike the 64DD, PlayStations were actually available. Delays literally pushed the game's release into the next millennium. In an interview with John Lawrence of Enix of America, Lawrence stated that the development team consisted of only about 35 people. Further, in an interview with Famitsu, Dragon Quest director said the game was initially to consist of 10 maps, much fewer than the end product we would have. In a GameSpot article from May 2000, they quote Enix's reason for a delay being due to the abundant amount of scenario in the game. These reasons surely account for many of those delays. I reached out to Enix of America Public Relations for more information on delays, 64DD development, and the localization effort, but they were unresponsive. By the year 2000, anticipation and excitement had skyrocketed. Enix announced a release for later that year, and as a result, then competitor Squaresoft delayed its anticipated Final Fantasy IX's release so as to avoid competition. An August IGN article stated that financial experts are predicting that Enix's Dragon Quest VII will give a boost to the Japanese economy, creating an estimated 50 billion yen effect. That's like $500! So needless to say, Dragon Quest is a pretty big deal over in Japan. It's even been said that Japanese law prohibits the release of Dragon Quest games on weekdays to prevent people from skipping work or school to play. As much as I want to believe that, it simply isn't true. The series has enjoyed a consistent production team over the years. Yuji Horii returned as the game's designer, Akira Toriyama of Dragon Ball fame came back as the artist, and esteemed composer Koichi Sugiyama once again provided the score. All three have been working on Dragon Quest since the series began and continue to do so today. Heartbeat Studio took on the development, and shortly after the game's release, the employees decided to take a sabbatical. Heartbeat would never start back up, but some of the employees would go on to develop games for Nintendo. On August 26, Dragon Quest VII was finally released in Japan and enjoyed immediate success. It would end up selling about 4.1 million units in the region, not including remakes and re-releases, unbelievably making it the best-selling PlayStation game in Japan ever, and the 20th best-selling video game in Japan of all time. That's redonkulous! DQ fans and the rest of the world watched with envy as no announcement for the release in other regions came. Little did we know, however, that Enix of America started the localization process shortly after the Japanese release. According to the John Lawrence interview, this was the biggest localization project the video game industry had ever seen, consisting of about 70,000 pages of text for 20 translators and 5 copy editors to process. Finally, in April 2001, it was announced that Dragon Quest VII would be released in North America. Eventually. The delay in the announcement can likely be explained by Enix of America wanting to systematically announce release dates so that several other Dragon Warrior games could create excitement. It was showed off at E3 in May and finally released on November 1st, 2001, over 14 months after its launch in Japan. It would sell about 200,000 copies in the region and receive very mixed reviews, partially due to the PlayStation 2 being on the market already, which had many moving on from the last generation console PlayStation 1s. This would be the last game in the series with the Warrior title in North America before taking on the Quest name as well. Our story, as it is, begins with an unnamed protagonist, or if you go by the manga, a protagonist named Oster or Aris. The hero is the son of a famed fisherman living on the lone island in the world, or so everyone thinks. When you and some friends gain possession of a strange rock shard and bring it to a derelict temple, you unlock a portal to a lost land of the past. Much of the story unfolds by returning similar shards to other pedestals in the ruins, each bringing you back to another strange world. When you save each land from whatever ailment plagues it, it is restored to the modern world map. Over the course of the adventure, Aris and his friends unravel the mysteries of how the world became divided and how you can save it. The cast of characters consists of the previously mentioned hero, the adventurous prince of your lone island and friend of the hero, Kiefer, the obstinate daughter of your town's mayor, Maribel, a wolf-turned-human boy, Gabo, a resurrected warrior from a past land, Melvin, and a ritual dancer from a tribe of the past, Era. Each brings their own plot lines as well as a tactical advantage to your party. Dragon Warrior 7 adds some new features from previous installments. Right away you'll notice the visuals. Though nothing to write home about, it does feature an interesting ability to pan around the hero at a 3/4 perspective. Rather than plain black battle backgrounds, we now get a scene depending on the terrain the battle's taking place in. Actions during these battles are also animated, and were even treated to the occasional CGI cutscene. More on the visuals later. The ability to talk to other party members is added, as well as a quick action button on the controller to reduce the amount of time spent in menus. Besides these aesthetic features, the core gameplay elements remain intact. You'll still explore an overworld map and find towns, castles, caves, and dungeons to explore. This castle looked bigger from the outside. You still get interrupted by random enemy encounters where you strategically select moves individually and watch them play out in turn-based rounds. Spells are of course present and require accrued magic points to cast. New are the skills, which are basically free spells. You'll become stronger and learn new abilities by defeating enemies, and likewise earn gold in this fashion to spend in towns on new items, weapons, and armor. 3,000 gold for a freaking evade armor? I'll pay it, but I don't have to like it. An intricate class system is introduced to Dragon Questers for the first time outside of Japan. It allows the characters to learn special abilities and alters their spells and statistics depending on the class. As usual, some distractions from the main quest present themselves along the way. A monster quest and an immigrant town are interesting side items you can build during your journey. Hidden throughout the game are tiny medals, usually referred to as mini-medals in other installments, which can be traded for rare loot. And if rare loot is your thing, I mean, why wouldn't it be? The casino is right up your alley, where you can waste obscene amounts of time playing poker, slot machines, and flip card to earn tokens to exchange for items. So that, in a grab shell, makes up the story, cast, and gameplay of Dragon Warrior 7. But as I said before, the game has had its fair share of criticisms, so let's start by addressing the big one, the visuals. Even taking into consideration that this is a PS1 title, it looks more like a Super NES game using some Super FX polygons or Mode 7 to accomplish the rotating camera perspective effects. Worst of all is the sprites outside of battle. They're continuously recycled even for the main characters, and they offer nothing in the way of animations. In fact, I can specifically think of 16-bit games that offer more in this department. Chrono. But if you take it for what it is, there are graphical elements to enjoy. The in-battle animations get better as the game goes on, and although the enemies are mostly static, Toriyama's art looks great as always. They probably could have safely left out the cutscenes, although I admit they were entertaining at the time. You've probably heard that this game is long, and let me tell you, you heard right. It is huge. You can easily put in 100 plus hours completing the main quest. The first time I played this nearly 15 years ago, I had 75 hours on a save file, but ultimately it got stuck and ended up losing the memory card to a college roommate. Which brings me to the next item on the list of common DQ7 critiques, the game's flow. You need to find shards to progress, but it's easy to miss some and the game doesn't necessarily direct you to them. You could spend hours combing over the game to find shards you're missing, and for a world this size with alternate paths and present maps, good luck with that. Luckily, you shouldn't have to spend too much time grinding levels, but later in the game it does start to take a ridiculous amount of battles to raise your character's levels and classes. In fact, at one point— Holy metal slimes! I'm gonna get you, you little— No, they're fleeing. Okay. 2 gone. I'm gonna get this last one. Don't run away. Don't run away. Deep breaths. The beginning of the game takes a lot of flack in particular. It's confusing what you need to do and moves at a bomb Craig's pace. It can take 3 hours before you see your first combat and 20 before the class system is introduced. You'll notice at the start that there are a lot more puzzles than past Dragon Quests, some of which have cryptic solutions. Yuji Horii and Shintaro Majima said in an interview that they felt like making something where you're active and you think what to do, but there's resistance from the game. Instead of giving everything to the player, you have to imagine or think more, and by then the answer will come to you. Well said, gentlemen. I'm always up for a good puzzle, but in 7 they can be hit or miss. You'll visit a lot of lands while you play, and each one has its own subplot. Some of these are really good, but the lack of a driving force from a central plot is present for much of the game, and you can really feel the lack. However, despite other critiques, I find the character development of your party to be pretty good. Back in 2001, people bashed Dragon Warrior 7 for not changing enough from its prequels, saying that it's stuck in the past. Looking back though, I think that this actually works out to its advantage. For example, most of the sound bits are the same as the 8-bit NES games. I have to give credit to 7 for being retro before retro was cool. It may be remembered for its shortfalls, but there is actually a lot to like here too. The class system may be complicated, but it's actually pretty good. It's just a shame you have to wait so long for it. I could make a whole video about how it works, but to summarize, you'll have access to the basic classes once you find Dharma Temple. Master a few of those and you'll have access to the intermediate classes. Master a few intermediate classes and you'll get access to master classes, and you can see how this is going. Some classes include Warrior, Mage, Jester, Teen Idol, okay, that's strange, and Shepherd? Sweet goddess, what have they done? The music. Oh, let me tell you, the music in this game is awesome. I only wish there was a little bit more variety. Hearing that battle music over and over again can get a bit repetitive, but what we do get is great. Sugiyama composed a symphonic version of the entire soundtrack that was included with the Japanese release. A piano version of the soundtrack would follow, and the entire soundtrack was reorchestrated for the 3DS remake by the Tokyo Metropolitan Symphony Orchestra. Did I mention that Dragon Quest was a pretty big deal in Japan? Obviously, Dragon Warrior 7 has its flaws, and I would be hard-pressed to recommend it to someone who isn't already a fan of the series. But even with all those drawbacks, there's enough good here that I can confidently say that this is a great game, and worthy of most of the acclaim it has gotten in Japan. If you like Japan RPG features like exploring, building characters, and collecting goodies, and you can get past the dated visuals, give it a chance. It goes for about $40 to $50 online now, depending on the condition, but you'll be able to play it for the PS1, 2, or 3, so hardware shouldn't be an issue for most. The 3DS version is available now for $40. So, speaking of the 3DS, at long last it's time to talk about that game. Square Enix announced they were making it in October of 2012, and it came out in Japan a while ago already, February 7th of 2013. It's sold about 1.3 million units so far, but just like the PlayStation version, it wasn't looking very good for us getting it in North America, even though to my understanding an English translation was made. But our fortunes took a turn for the better in November 2015 when Nintendo announced it would grace our shores in 2016. In a March 2016 Nintendo Direct, it was given its current release date of September 16th of 2016, 3.5 short years after the Japanese release. It won't take long for players to realize that this is no port. Dragon Quest VII is a full-on remastering of the original built from the ground up. For anyone that wishes they could have played the original or had a hard time getting into the original, this is exactly what you've been waiting for. So, who's excited? It looks like it'll be an excellent update to the 2001 classic, and I have no doubt that it'll live up to the mostly positive pre-release reviews it's been getting, and I'm sure that we can expect to see some surprises along the way as well. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the video and what you'd like to see done in the future. This has been Mark from Keller Creative Games, and please make sure you subscribe to know exactly when new content on Dragon Quest and all things video games is posted. Thank you for watching.